Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody to the fifth meeting of the Public Utility Commission for calendar year 2015 and ask that you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on this morning's agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February 12th public meeting, and it's a pleasure to recognize Commissioner Whitmer as editor of the minutes. Commissioner Whitmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In advance of Sunday's announcement on who makes the cut and who doesn't make the cut for the NCAA tournament, I've been planning my bracket, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that neither one of our alma maters are going to make that cut. However, I do believe that the minutes of February 12th, 2014 will. So I went ahead, read them over, and I move that they now be accepted as submitted.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. But since you did bring up NCAA basketball, Commissioner Whitmer, I'm proud to send a nice shout out to Coach Andy Toole, a proud graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, head coach, one of the youngest head coaches in Division I basketball at Robert Morris University. Robert Morris is clocked their ticket to the big dance. And congratulations to Coach Andy Toole from Robert Morris University. Again, my university will not be in that field. We'll turn to our official agenda here this morning, and we'll start with our Bureau of Audits. The first matter in front of us is PECO Energy Universal Service Fund. I move that we adopt the staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Turning to the Office of Special Assistance, we'll move all items on page 2, 3, and 4. All items on page 2 and 3 of the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Turning to the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, in omnibus fashion, I move all items on page 4, 5, and 6, including all items on page 7, 8, and 9 of the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. We'll now turn to our Law Bureau. First case involving Yak Communications America. I move that we adopt the staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Turning to the second case on page 10 of the agenda is the Act 129 Energy Efficiency Phase 3 approval here this morning. I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
I'd also like to now recognize Commissioner Whitmer for purposes of a statement here this morning. Commissioner Whitmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like my statement entered into the record as if I'd read it in its entirety. The tentative order that we considered today made a number of findings regarding Phase 3 of the Energy Efficiency Conservation Program. As I've stated in the last review of these programs, I continue to firmly believe that the cheapest, most efficient kilowatt hour is the one that you never have to use. These programs, when cost-effective, provide numerous positive benefits to all customers. Understanding the importance of this proceeding and with a sincere desire to design the most cost-effective and beneficial EE&C and DR programs possible within Act 129's cost-benefit requirement, I ask commenters to focus on a few issues. The first one being in the Phase 2 implementation order, we required EDCs to develop EE&C plans that contain at least one comprehensive measure, including whole building treatments for residential and small commercial rate classes. In this tentative order, the Commission declines to define what qualifies as a comprehensive program under Act 129, but does propose that EDCs include at least one comprehensive program for residential and one comprehensive program for non-residential customer rate classes. Commenters are encouraged to explain whether the Commission should be more prescriptive in this area, for example, requiring a whole building program, instead of generically requiring that 2 comprehensive programs be included in Phase 3 EE&C plans. The second area I ask for comment on concerns the SWE's DR potential study. In the SWE's DR potential study, the SWE was not able to find any cost-effective peak demand reductions in Penelec's service territory. Accordingly, the Commission proposes that Penelec have no specific peak demand reduction target, but reserves the possibility that Penelec could voluntarily include a DR program in its EE&C plan for Phase 3 if it demonstrates cost-effectiveness. Commenters are encouraged to explain whether these determinations are consistent with the policy goals and statutory requirements of Act 129, as well as whether the corresponding result is in the public interest. Lastly, the tentative order recommends continuing the low-income carve-out, which requires a specific number of energy measures for households at or below 150% of the federal poverty income guidelines. Additionally, rather than retaining the minimum 4.5% consumption reduction as used in Phases 1 and 2, the Commission is proposing to require that each EDC obtain a minimum of 5.5% of their total consumption reduction target from the low-income sector, with the additional requirement that no less than 2% of this consumption reduction target be obtained exclusively from direct installed low-income measures. Commenters are encouraged to explain, again, whether these determinations are consistent with the policy goals and statutory requirements, as well as whether the corresponding result is in the public interest. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to continuing the dialogue on optimal energy efficiency conservation and demand reduction programs designed specifically for Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer, and also thank you for your leadership on this issue. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, noting the statement of Commissioner Whitmer. Turning to the case involving Lyft, Inc., a petition for waiver of the Commission's existing vehicle regulations, I move that we adopt the staff recommendation here this morning.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Turning to page 11 of the agenda, the matter entitled Energy Efficiency and Conservation Programs, a 2016 PA Total Resource Cost Test. I move that we adopt the staff recommendation.
Second.
And now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley for purposes of his statement here this morning. Commissioner Cawley.
Thank you, Chairman. I ask that my statement be placed on the record as if I had read it in its entirety. This is a tentative order that we are adopting this morning, which makes adjustments in the total resource cost test used to determine whether the benefits exceed the costs in Phase 3, which will begin as of June 1st, 2016. I asked the parties to address certain questions because the proposal limits consideration of benefits relating to reduced capacity, energy, transmission, and distribution costs. And I note that some other states who have adopted similar cost tests include a more expansive assessment of benefits. And I therefore ask the parties to consider other benefits and whether they can be included or should be included in the cost test. And I look forward to receiving the comments that we'll receive from this tentative order. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawley. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, noting the statement of Commissioner Cawley. Turning to the Office of Administrative Law Judge, we have the single case involving PPL Interstate Energy Company and PPL Electric Utilities Corporation. And I have a motion that I'd like to have entered into the record as if read in its entirety. Simply put, I'll not read the motion here this morning. It's simply a clarification on a technical correction in the recommended decision here this morning.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously here this morning. This concludes our regular meeting agenda. We're going to now turn to the carrying agenda, and we have one issue from our Office of Special Assistance involving Wellsboro Electric Company and Citizens Electric Company of Lewisburg, and I move that we support the staff recommendation here this morning.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously here this morning. That concludes our meeting agenda here this morning, and we are adjourned.